I saw my wife's lover take her to the company party. He got out of the car, opened the door for her with a confident smile, his hand rested on her waist, as if it were already a habit, as if that gesture had belonged to them for a long time. I was there, a few meters away, inside my car, the engine off, my fingers pressed against the steering wheel with a force that was painful. My stomach turned. My chest burned. It wasn't anger yet, it was something worse. A dull pain, a paralyzing disbelief, a torpor. What the hell was going on? My wife. My wife. The one with whom I shared years of my life, with whom I made plans, with whom I shared moments that I thought were unique. The one who, until a few hours ago, told me she loved me. And there she was, getting out of another man's car, fixing her dress with a nervous but excited smile, fixing her hair as if she wanted to look perfect for him. For him. I took a deep breath, but the air didn't seem to come in. My heart raced erratically, my vision narrowed. Should I get out of there? Should she confront them now, in the middle of the parking lot, while she was still unsure whether her makeup was flawless? I didn't know. My body didn't move. I could only look. My chest rose and fell hard, as if something was about to explode inside me. Then, she laughed. A low, intimate laugh. The kind of laughter that was once mine. The kind of laugh she made when I whispered something funny in her ear. And now, it was for him. For this stranger. Or maybe it wasn't even that strange. My brain started to join the dots, remember little things that had previously seemed insignificant. Afternoons where she arrived late from work, messages that ended too quickly when I entered the room, that new perfume that she insisted was just to make her feel good. But it was never for me. Never. I swallowed hard. My fingers let go of the steering wheel for a moment, but then I closed my fists. No. I wouldn't leave. I would follow them. I needed to see where this went. His stomach was in knots, his eyes were fixed on them as they entered the room. The company party, a formal event, full of co-workers, people we know. And she was there, with him. Didn't seem to care. He didn't seem to feel guilty. I got out of the car slowly, feeling each step weighing tons, but at the same time with an unbearable lightness, as if I were floating in the vacuum of everything that was about to happen. My feet touched the asphalt, my breathing ragged. It was like a nightmare, but a real nightmare, where every second was a new stab at my dignity. I followed his steps from a distance, I saw him hold her hand, squeezing her fingers between his with a security that made me grind my teeth. The hall was large, bright, and I passed through the doors without being noticed. Music was playing somewhere in the background, but my ears were filled only with the sound of my blood boiling. My eyes wandered around the space until I found them again. They danced. His hand on her waist, her body pressed against his, her lips dangerously close to his ear. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a blatant, naked betrayal. It was the end of something that, until a few hours ago, I thought was intact. And if it was the end, I would make sure it was an epic end. I didn't scream. I didn't run to them. I didn't make a fuss. Not yet. Instead, I watched. I saw how comfortable she was in his arms. I watched as he slid his fingers over her skin as if he had done it 1,000 times before. And maybe it already had. And then, an idea formed in my head. I could confront them there, throw all the dirt to the fan, and see the look of shock on her face. But that would be predictable. That would be what anyone would do. I wanted more. I wanted her to feel every bit of the pain she was causing me right now. I wanted her to know I wasn't an idiot. That I never was. That I just trusted. I grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and put it to my lips without tasting it. My heart was beating hard. My fingers were shaking slightly. And so, I waited. I waited for the right moment. The toast. The boss's speech. Everyone's attention was focused on the stage. That's where I would come in. It was there that I would say the words that would make that night never forgotten. May her name be whispered in the halls for years to come. That she understood, once and for all, that you can't play with someone's loyalty with impunity. She thought she would get out of this without consequences. That she could simply continue her life by his side while I, the man who gave her everything, would become just an uncomfortable memory. But I was wrong. Very mistaken. What I had to say that night wasn't just for her. It was for everyone. It was for colleagues, for friends, for bosses. It was so that everyone would know who she really was. And the impact that would have, oh, she had no idea. But I was about to find out. The waiter passed by again, collecting the empty glasses. The speech was about to begin. Smiles were shining on everyone's faces. But my smile was different. A cold smile. A smile that knew that, in a few minutes, everything would change. She thought I was at home. I thought I was safe. But it wasn't. She never was. And now, I was the one in control. The game had turned. The microphone was turned on. Silence took over the room. And I advanced, slowly, without rushing. Each step was calculated. Every second was precious. The air around me felt heavier, denser. I saw people's excited faces, their eyes attentive to the stage. And then, I saw her eyes. I saw the exact moment he saw me. The moment he realized something was wrong. The color drained from his face. The body stiffened. She knew. And I enjoyed that second of pure panic before I opened my mouth. Before saying the words that would make this night never forgotten. Before turning the page once and for all. But what did I say? What happened after the eyes turned to me? What did I do that night that changed everything? Well, this is a story that needs to be told to the end. Welcome to the channel. Here, betrayal is never romanticized, on the contrary, we show how it destroys lives, corrodes relationships and leaves irreversible marks. All the stories are fictional, but the feelings we portray are real, intense and full of consequences. Each narrative serves as a powerful reminder that trust is fragile and that poor choices always take their toll. Get ready for a shocking story, full of twists and moments that will keep you hooked from beginning to end. Take a deep breath, and let's get started. The night was cool, with a gentle breeze that made the leaves of the trees sway slowly, whispering secrets in the silence of the city. The clock said 7:45 p.m. when Ethan parked the car in the garage of his house. Fatigue weighed heavily on his shoulders after another long day of work, but he didn't care. Since marrying Olivia, he had learned to find comfort in routine. He liked to know that, at the end of it all, he would return to a home that he built with dedication, a place where her laughter echoed in the rooms and where the smell of her perfume still lingered in the air, even when she wasn't around. It was a solid marriage, or at least he always believed it was. Olivia had something about him that completely disarmed him, a subtle way of making him a better man without having to say anything. The two met years ago, in one of those meetings that seemed casual, but that destiny had already traced with precision. She is full of energy and dreams, he is a methodical man focused on his goals. Over time, they learned to balance their differences and transform their individualities into something that strengthened them. Ethan was never a man for grand gestures, but he made a point of showing how much he cared in small details, like making her coffee exactly how she liked it or remembering to buy the flowers she always mentioned in passing. For him, love lived in these little things. Upon entering the house, he found the room illuminated by yellowish lights that brought a feeling of coziness. The aroma of home cooking filled the air, and for a moment, he felt that familiar comfort settle in his chest. Olivia was in the kitchen, finishing setting the table. The light dress she wore molded to her body with natural elegance, and her loose hair fell lightly over her shoulders. She smiled when she saw him, but there was something in her eyes, a different, almost imperceptible glow that passed too quickly for him to decipher. Ethan walked over and hugged her from behind, feeling her warm skin under his hands. He closed his eyes for a moment, enjoying that touch, that moment of closeness that always made him forget any worries. Olivia laughed softly and turned to face him, placing her hands gently on his face. She asked him about his day, and he responded automatically, telling her the details she used to like to hear, but her mind was elsewhere. There was something there, a subtle change that he couldn't name, but it disturbed his thoughts. Dinner happened like any other, with light conversations, occasional laughter and the feeling of normality that always accompanied their nights. But something hung in the air, invisible, untouchable, and Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was slightly out of place. Olivia was excited for the company party that was taking place over the weekend, an annual event that brought together colleagues, managers, and important guests. She mentioned that it would be a great opportunity to relax and have some fun. Ethan nodded in agreement, not paying much attention to the matter. He was never a big fan of corporate events, but if Olivia wanted to go, he had no problem. He trusted her. Always trusted. Their love was a solid pillar, resistant to time, adversity, small crises that came and went like any long-term relationship. There was never any reason to doubt. After dinner, Olivia picked up the dishes and carried them to the sink, her movements as automatic as the thoughts flooding Ethan's mind. He watched her, her every gesture etched in his memory, every detail of her was something he knew all too well. But even so, that uncomfortable feeling wouldn't leave him. She seemed distant, even though she was there, within reach of his hands. Something inside him tried to scream, warn, alert, but he ignored it. Maybe it was just tiredness. Maybe he was imagining things. He reached out and slid his hands around her waist, pulling her close one last time that night. He felt her hesitate for a fraction of a second before returning the hug, a detail so small that anyone else would have ignored it. But not him. He felt it. The week passed without major incident, with the usual routine filling the days predictably. The work, the calls, the emails, the gym, the shared meals. Olivia seemed increasingly excited about the party, talking about the details, the dresses she wanted to try on, the shoes that would match the occasion. Ethan listened attentively, without really getting involved. He knew that parties like those were important to her, and if she made a point of enjoying it, he didn't mind accompanying her or letting her go alone. In the past, they had attended events like this together, but recently, Ethan preferred to avoid it. He liked his home, his quiet moments, a silent dinner instead of a room full of voices and loud music. Olivia, on the other hand, was always sociable. She liked to interact, to laugh out loud, to live each moment with intensity. They were different, but those differences were never a problem. The day before the party, Olivia spent the day away, saying she needed to take care of some things before the event. Ethan didn't question it, he just wanted her to enjoy the day. He spent the time organizing some work issues and took advantage of the solitude to put some things in order. At the end of the afternoon, he received a message from her, saying that she would arrive a little later than expected. He didn't think much about it. It was common for things to take longer than planned. When Olivia arrived, she was excited, talking about how she had found the perfect dress and how everything was coming together for the next night. Ethan smiled, following her excitement, but unable to get rid of the uncomfortable feeling that had accompanied him the last few days. Something was changing, he felt it, but he couldn't name what. On the morning of the party, Olivia looked more radiant than usual. She spent most of her time getting ready, choosing accessories, trying different perfumes. Ethan watched everything with a mix of admiration and an uneasiness that he didn't know where it came from. When she was finally ready, he saw her come down the stairs with a twinkle in her eye, a smile that seemed lit from within. She approached him and asked if he was sure he didn't want to go. He shook his head, saying he preferred to stay at home. Olivia nodded, without insisting much. She gave him a kiss on the cheek, picked up her bag and left. Ethan stood still for a long time, staring at the closed door, listening to the silence it had left behind. His heart was beating faster than it should. His thoughts spun in an endless cycle. He didn't know why, but for the first time in a long time, something inside him told him something was about to change. He just had no idea what was coming. The night seemed endless. Ethan tried to focus on the television screen, but the sounds around the house seemed louder than usual, as if everything was amplified by the silence Olivia had left behind. The dining table still held traces of the dinner he had made, but which she hadn't had time to eat. The sofa still had the subtle mark of her body, as if he could feel her presence even without her being there. He took a deep breath, trying to shake off the uneasiness that had settled in his chest since he saw her leave. There was something wrong. Something he couldn't name, but it gnawed at his tranquility like a silent warning inside his mind. He took out his cell phone and looked at the screen. No messages. No calls. Olivia always sent at least one note, a little update on how the night was going, even if it was just, "I got home safely." But now, nothing. Time passed, the hands of the clock advanced like sharp blades cutting through his patience. He tried to ignore it, tried to convince himself that there was no reason to worry, that it was just his mind playing tricks. But the feeling persisted, an uncomfortable presence inside him, a calling that wouldn't leave him alone. He got up and walked to the kitchen, pouring himself a glass of water that did nothing to ease the tight lump in his throat. He looked at his cell phone again. Still nothing. His mind began to revisit past moments, little scenes that now seemed to have another meaning. The delays, the excuses, the discreet smiles as he looked at his phone screen, the evasive answers when he asked about work. Everything that previously seemed insignificant now seemed to fit into a puzzle that he didn't want to complete. His heart raced when an idea crossed his mind with an almost physical force. He needed to go there. I needed to see with my own eyes what was happening at that party. I couldn't ignore the feeling that intensified with every second. He grabbed the car key, walked out the door without thinking twice, and was soon on the road, cutting the path to the place where the event was taking place. The parking lot was full, and he had to circle around before finding a space to stop. The hall's lights shone brightly through the glass windows, reflecting the euphoria of the night unfolding inside. Ethan got out of the car, his legs heavy, his heart beating so hard he could almost hear it. He crossed the space with calculated steps, trying to maintain rationality even when everything inside him screamed for him to just open the doors and enter without thinking about the consequences. The sound of music and conversations filled the room as he approached. His eyes swept the space, searching for her, for any sign of her presence. Then he saw her. She was in the middle of the room, her dress perfectly fitted to her body, her loose hair falling in waves over her shoulders. But I wasn't alone. The vision hit Ethan like a blow straight to the chest. Olivia laughed, her face lit up, her eyes shining in a way he hadn't seen in a long time. And next to her, there was another man. He leaned in to say something close to her ear, and Olivia threw her head back, laughing with an intimacy that made Ethan's blood boil. Her gaze at him, the way their bodies seemed in sync, as if they already belonged together, made the ground disappear beneath Ethan's feet. He stood still, feeling the weight of the scene sink him into an abyss of disbelief. Every detail was a sharp blade against your skin. The way the man touched her waist, how Olivia didn't back away, how she returned the touches and smiles without hesitation. Time seemed to slow down, making everything more cruel. Ethan felt something shatter inside him, a shard of reality cutting through the fantasy he had built about his marriage. His wife wasn't just kind to a coworker, she wasn't just a pleasant presence at the party. She was committed to that man in a way that made her mind scream. And then, as if the universe wanted to ensure he had no doubts, he saw the inevitable. The man gently cupped Olivia's face, running his fingers along her chin before pulling her into a kiss. It wasn't a hesitant kiss, it wasn't a momentary slip. It was a kiss full of desire, of surrender, of something Ethan would never have imagined seeing. Olivia didn't push him away. She didn't back down. On the contrary, he closed his eyes and lost himself in that contact as if he were exactly where he wanted to be. The air around Ethan seemed to disappear. His chest constricted in suffocating pain, an unbearable weight pressing down on his body from the inside out. His mind refused to accept what he saw, but his eyes couldn't deny it. This was the woman he loved, the woman he trusted, the woman he built a life with. And there she was, in the arms of another, without any sign of regret or guilt. The world around disappeared. The sound of music became distant, people's conversations became just an irrelevant murmur. All that existed at that moment was the betrayal staring him in the face. Every fiber of his body demanded a reaction. A confrontation. A scream. But he didn't move. He stood there, watching everything as if he were trapped in a nightmare from which he couldn't wake up. His chest rose and fell unevenly, his fists clenched at his sides. He wanted to understand. He wanted to know how long it had been happening. He wanted to know how many times Olivia had lied, how many nights she had spent by his side while her heart belonged to someone else. But more than anything, I wish that scene had never happened. He wanted to erase that moment from his life, to rip out of himself the suffocating pain that now took over every part of his being. But it was already too late. The truth was there, laid out before their eyes, and there was no going back. What he would do with it, he still didn't know. But one thing was certain, it wouldn't stay like this. And then, something inside him lit up. A plan, an idea, a need to react in a way that made Olivia understand what she had done. He wouldn't confront her there. I wouldn't make an impulsive scandal. There was a better way. There was a way to ensure she felt the pain at the same intensity. His betrayal would not go unnoticed. It would not be forgotten. Olivia thought she was in control, she thought she could cheat without consequences, she thought she could go on with her life without the truth having any real weight. But I was wrong. Ethan took a step back, his hands shaking slightly, but his mind was already beginning to organize itself. The game was just beginning. The right moment would come, and when it came, she would understand that some choices have a price too high to be paid. The room was full of voices and laughter. The background music gave a light tone to the evening, which for many there was just another corporate celebratory event. But for Ethan, it was the scene of ruin. The ruin of what he believed to be a life built on trust, on love, on respect. He remained still, hidden among the guests, watching. The heat of the environment contrasted with the coldness that settled inside him. Olivia didn't seem worried, didn't show any hesitation or fear of being discovered. The man beside her moved with confidence, and Ethan couldn't look away from the way his hands rested on her body, the smiles they exchanged, the closeness that screamed what he now knew to be the truth. But he wouldn't let that night end like that. He would not let the betrayal go unnoticed, the humiliation to be his alone. He waited for the right moment, a moment when everyone was gathered around the stage, when the company's CEO took the microphone to give a formal speech about the year's successes. Silence spread throughout the room as attention turned to the man who began to talk about the company's growth and the employees' commitment. But for Ethan, this was the exact moment. He moved among the guests, his hands were shaking slightly, but his expression was firm. He approached the center of the room, stopping just a few feet from where Olivia and her lover stood. The CEO continued his speech, without noticing the tension that was forming in Ethan's eyes. Then, without any warning, he raised his voice, strong enough to cut through the respectful silence that filled the room. Everyone's attention turned to him. Olivia's eyes met his, and in that instant, he saw panic rise across her face, as if the air had gone from her lungs. She knew. She understood that something was about to happen. But it was too late to escape. The guests looked at each other, confused, as Ethan walked forward, grabbing a glass of champagne from one of the nearby tables. He raised his glass as if to toast and smiled, but there was no trace of happiness in that smile. The CEO stopped talking, the room fell into charged silence, and Olivia looked petrified. He looked at her for a long moment, feeling every part of his body vibrate with a mixture of pain and adrenaline, and then he spoke, his voice firm, without hesitation. He told about his arrival at the party, about what he saw. About the kiss. About the hands that slid without fear. With each word, the murmurs in the crowd increased, eyes widened, and Olivia backed away, as if she could escape the words that fell like blades upon her. But Ethan didn't end there. He wanted everyone to know, for every person in that room to understand that this night was not just about business and celebration, but about betrayal and consequences. Olivia's lover, until then impassive, tried to intervene, tried to minimize the situation, but Ethan didn't give him a chance. He turned to the man and exposed something that no one expected. Ethan already knew who he was. I already knew what he was doing. He wasn't just any colleague. He was a married man. Father of 2 children. A well-known name in the company, someone respected, someone who, like Olivia, believed she could lead a double life without anything coming to light. But now, there, in front of everyone, everything was exposed. The room was filled with low voices, whispers and shocked looks. Some people walked away, others looked at Olivia as if they were seeing her for the first time. The impact was immediate. Her lover lost the color in his face, Olivia put her hand over her mouth, her eyes full of despair. But Ethan didn't move, didn't back away. He just watched as reality crushed them both as the mask fell and the truth stood before everyone. She tried to get closer, tried to say something, but he raised his hand, interrupting any attempt at justification. There was no explanation that could erase what happened. There were no words that could repair what was destroyed. Ethan then took his cell phone out of his pocket and, in front of everyone, showed something he had discovered shortly before entering that room. A test that made everything even worse. A bank transfer. One payment. Something that, if before it seemed like an impulsive affair, now revealed itself to be something much deeper. Olivia not only cheated on him, but became financially involved with her lover. Shared money. Paid trips. Split accounts. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was also a practical betrayal, a meticulous planning for a future without Ethan. The shock spread like wildfire among the guests. Some people looked away, others seemed unable to process what they were hearing. Olivia's lover tried to take the cell phone from Ethan's hands, but he was faster, putting the device away and taking a step back. He looked at Olivia one last time, trying to find something in her that justified all of this. But all he saw was fear. Not regret. Not blame. Just fear. Fear of exposure, fear of consequences, fear of losing everything I believed I was building. And in that instant, Ethan knew. I knew that no matter what I said, she never loved him the way he loved her. It was never about love. It was about choice. And she chose to cheat. Ethan turned away, leaving Olivia and her lover surrounded by the stares and silent judgments of the guests. He didn't look back, didn't wait to see how she would react. He already knew enough. I had already seen everything I needed to see. And as I walked through the exit door, I felt that, for the first time that night, I was truly breathing. The end of that story was not the end of him. It was just the beginning of something new. Something where he would finally understand that sometimes, losing someone isn't a curse. It's a liberation. The sound of Olivia's heels echoed on the polished floor of the room as she tried to reach him, her breathing quickening, her eyes wide, still in shock from the brutal exposure she had just suffered. Ethan didn't look back. He walked straight, steady, feeling the cold night air hit his face as soon as he crossed the event exit. But she couldn't let him go. Not like that. Not without saying something, anything, that could prevent the total collapse of everything they had, or rather, everything she had destroyed. When she finally reached him outside, Olivia grabbed his arm, her icy hand gripping his sleeve urgently, as if the contact could reverse everything that had just happened. He stopped, but didn't look at her right away. His breathing was heavy, his body was rigid, as if any further movement would bring him to the point of no return. And then, he heard her voice, shaky but still trying to sound controlled. "Ethan, please, we need to talk." He laughed lowly, a dry, bitter laugh that seemed to weigh the air between them. Slowly, he turned to face her, his eyes carrying a weariness she had never seen before. "To speak? Now do you want to talk, Olivia? After everything?" She swallowed hard, her eyes full of pleading, her fingers still gripping the fabric of his coat, as if that were enough to stop him from leaving. I didn't want it to be like this. I never wanted to hurt you." Ethan pulled his arm back, freeing himself from her grip, as if the simple touch was something that now disgusted him. His jaw clenched, and for a moment, he had to control the rising anger inside him to keep from exploding altogether. "You didn't want to hurt me?" he repeated, disbelief evident in his voice. "So tell me, Olivia, what exactly did you expect? That I would never find out? How long could you lead this double life?" She blinked rapidly, searching for the right words, but nothing seemed to be enough. His mouth opened and closed a few times, nervousness taking over. "I don't know. I was confused." He took a step forward, and this time it was she who stepped back, feeling the weight of his presence, feeling the silent fury emanating from the man who, until that night, had been her husband. "Confused? Is that the excuse? Did you betray me because you were confused? What about the money, Olivia? That money you transferred to him? Is this also part of your confusion?" Her eyes widened, and it was in that instant that Ethan knew he was right. There was much more to betrayal than just momentary feelings or desires. "Did you think I wouldn't know?" He laughed, shaking his head. "I found out before I even got in there. I just needed to see with my own eyes that I wasn't mistaken." Olivia's lips trembled, and for the first time that night, he saw something that looked like true desperation. She knew there was nowhere left to run, that all the lies had shattered. "Ethan, tell me, Olivia. Since when? Since when was this happening?" He interrupted, his voice lower now, but filled with raw pain, something that had been building up for much longer than he himself had realized. She hesitated, closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, tears threatened to fall. "Months." The air seemed to escape his lungs, as if he had finally received the final blow. "Months." It wasn't a momentary error, it wasn't an insignificant slip. It was something planned, something nurtured. Something real. He took a step back, running his hands over his face, trying to digest the information as Olivia watched him with an expression of suffocating guilt. "I don't know what to say," she murmured, but he just let out a bitter laugh. "You don't need to say anything. There is nothing more to be said." She stepped forward, hesitantly, as if there was still some chance of repairing the irreversible damage she had done. "I made a mistake. But it doesn't mean I never loved you." His eyes fixed on her, and this time, there was no more fury. Just a deep and irreversible disappointment. "Do you think it makes any difference now?" His voice was low, almost a whisper. "What's left, Olivia? What's left of what we were?" She didn't respond. Because deep down, I knew he was right. There was nothing else. The silence between them was long and heavy, until Ethan took a deep breath and took another step back. "I hope it was worth it." And then, he turned around and started walking. Olivia remained there, standing still, watching as he walked away, feeling her heart race like it was about to explode. And then, at the last moment, she shouted, "He promised me something you never did." Ethan stopped. His posture became rigid, and for an instant, everything around him seemed to disappear. He turned slowly, narrowing his eyes at her, waiting for her to continue. Olivia took a deep breath, fighting the tears, the pain that was now suffocating her. "He promised he would never make me feel invisible." Her words hung in the air, like a punch straight to the gut. And for the first time, Ethan felt something different mixed with the anger. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't acceptance. But rather a bitter awareness that, perhaps, he too had failed. But the difference between them was clear. He never lied. Never cheated. He never destroyed what they had. Without saying anything else, he turned around again and continued walking. This time, it didn't stop. He didn't look back. There was no longer any reason to stay. And when the car door closed behind him, he knew that would be the last time he would hear her voice like that. Because at that moment, it wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the end of everything. The road seemed a blur before Ethan's eyes, but he didn't care about the signs, the streetlights, or the low music playing on the radio. His mind was elsewhere, in a whirlwind of thoughts that intertwined without logic, without mercy. The steering wheel was firm between his fingers, but everything inside seemed to fall apart. The bitter taste of the night was still in his mouth, Olivia's words echoing over and over in his mind, like an echo of something he never wanted to hear. He didn't know where he was going, he just knew he couldn't go home. That place that was once a refuge was now stained with the shadow of betrayal, with the images he could never erase. The street seemed emptier than ever, or maybe it was he who was feeling that way, an immense emptiness growing inside his chest, consuming everything he once believed to be true. He stopped the car somewhere, didn't even bother to see where he was. He just let his head fall against the steering wheel, closing his eyes, feeling the weight of fatigue mixed with pain. The trust, the love, the life he'd built with Olivia, everything now seemed like an illusion. A theater that he was the last to realize was fake. How could he be so blind? How did you not see the signs? Or did you see them but chose to ignore them because the truth was too cruel to accept? He always believed that love was made of daily choices, of commitment, of respect. But Olivia made another choice. She chose to hurt him. He chose another man. He chose to lie, deceive, hide. And now, he found himself faced with an inescapable truth: he was no longer the same. Something inside him had been broken in a way that might never be fixed. The phone vibrated on the car console, and he looked at the screen without really wanting to answer it. Her name flashed on the screen, but he ignored it. Olivia no longer had anything to say that could make any difference. However, the insistence of the calls made him realize that perhaps it wasn't just about empty excuses. Something was happening. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to answer, but kept his voice cold, distant, without any trace of emotion. "What do you want, Olivia?" On the other end of the line, her breathing was shaky, and for a moment, there was a charged silence before her voice finally emerged, low, restrained, as if it carried the weight of something she couldn't bear alone. "He abandoned me, Ethan." He closed his eyes, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. Her lover, the one she risked everything for, the one she destroyed an entire marriage for, simply disappeared when the situation got out of control. As was predictable. But didn't Olivia see that before? Didn't she see that she was being used? Did she really believe that this man was willing to pay the price of betrayal along with her? And should I care? His voice was sharp, cold. She hesitated, as if she had expected any other reaction but that. I don't know what to do." Ethan ran a hand over his face, feeling anger slowly build within him. "Now you don't know what to do? Now that he's gone, now that you're alone? Olivia, did you expect me to save you after all?" Her silence was the answer. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know that won't happen. I just wanted you to know." He laughed, but there was no humor in that laugh. "Did you want me to know? Excellent. Now I know. And now? What do you expect me to do with this?" Again, she hesitated. His breathing was uneven, as if he was holding back tears that he could no longer contain. "I did everything wrong, Ethan. I threw away everything we had. Ethan was silent for a moment. He could feel the pain in her voice, the shame, the belated regret. But did it matter? He could feel pity, he could even recognize that, in some way, she was broken just like he was. But that didn't change the fact that she made her choice. Yes, Olivia. You threw it all away. She sobbed softly, but he no longer felt the urge to comfort her. The woman crying on the other end of the line was not the same one he had met. He didn't know who she was anymore. I don't know who I am without you. Ethan closed his eyes, letting the pain cut through his chest like a blade. But he knew he could no longer carry that burden. He spent years being the foundation of the relationship, believing they were together, that they were partners. But now he saw that he had always been the one to support everything himself. And I don't know who I am with you anymore. The connection was muted. Olivia had no answer for that. Because it was the truth. The only truth left. And then, he ended the call, with nothing more to say. He threw the phone on the passenger seat and stared into space in front of him. The road was still there, the world was still spinning, but for him, something had changed irreversibly. He needed to move on. Not because I wanted to, but because there was no other choice. Olivia had made that decision for him when she chose to betray him. Loneliness was no longer a punishment. It was a liberation. He started the car again, but this time, there was no hesitation in his hands. He knew exactly where he wanted to go. The morning stretched on in an uncomfortable silence as Ethan drove with no apparent destination, the sound of the engine filling the absence of words that he no longer knew how to say. What was left? The feeling of a weight that had previously crushed him began to slowly dissolve, but what came after the pain? The dark road, cut by the dim street lights in the distance, seemed like a reflection of his own mind, empty, uncertain, about to transform into something new. But not yet now. There was still too much debris. There was still a past that wouldn't let go of his wrist completely. The phone vibrated sporadically on the passenger seat, but he didn't look at it. It didn't need to. I knew it was Olivia. He knew that now that she was alone, she would try to look for an anchor in him, something that would keep her afloat, but that was no longer her responsibility. He stopped the car at an abandoned gas station on the side of the road, needing a moment to breathe without the weight of everything that had happened that night. He leaned against the steering wheel, eyes closed, feeling exhaustion weighing him down. Every fiber of his body bore the wear and tear of years of trust shattered in a matter of hours. But then, in the middle of it all, a soft sound broke the silence. A new notification. But it wasn't Olivia. He hesitantly picked up his cell phone, the light from the screen illuminating his tired face. An unexpected message. A number he didn't recognize, but whose name appeared after a second of system hesitation. A distant memory, an echo of a past he hasn't revisited in ages. Molly. Olivia's lover's wife. The message was short, but filled with an intention that made Ethan's stomach turn. I think we need to talk. He stood still for long seconds, staring at those words. What did she want? Did he already know everything? Was she as destroyed as he was? Or was there somehow still something hidden, something he hadn't noticed? With a sigh, he replied. Where? The answer came quickly, as if she had already been waiting. Main Street Starbucks. Now. Ethan looked at the clock on the car's dashboard. It was after 2 in the morning. But sleep was the last thing he would get at that moment. He started the engine again, ignoring all of Olivia's unread notifications, and drove towards the 24-hour cafe, feeling a mix of curiosity and a strange feeling that this wasn't over yet. When he arrived, Molly was already there. Sitting in one of the far corners, an untouched cup of coffee in front of her. She looked worn out, her swollen eyes showed that she had been crying, but her posture was firm. When Ethan approached, she looked up, and for a moment, they exchanged a shared silence of mutual understanding. He sat without saying anything. She studied him for a moment, and then, with a tired sigh, she spoke. Did you know before or after the public humiliation? He let out a low, humorless laugh. Before. But I needed to see it with my own eyes. Molly nodded, lightly turning the cup between her fingers, as if she was organizing her thoughts. I knew before everything. Long before. Ethan frowned, leaning forward slightly. Like this? She let out a long sigh, looking away from the window for a moment before looking back at him. I found out a while ago. It wasn't difficult. Franklin was never a smart man when it came to hiding his tracks. But I didn't confront it. Not at first. Ethan didn't interrupt. Just waited. I wanted to know how far it was going. I wanted to understand. And what I discovered was worse than I expected. He felt a tension build in the air between them. Something about that sentence carried more than a simple case of betrayal. What did you discover? Molly took a deep breath, and then, in a low voice, she said, Olivia wasn't the only one. The silence that followed was almost suffocating. What? She nodded slowly. Franklin has a pattern. He approaches women in crisis. Women who feel like they are being ignored, forgotten. He feeds on it. Manipulate. Convince. And then, when you already have them in the palm of your hand, use them. For money. For status. For everything you can extract from them. Ethan felt something cold run down his spine. So Olivia was just one more. He passed his hand over his face, absorbing that information. Why are you telling me this now? Molly shrugged, a sad smile forming on her lips. Because I thought you deserved to know. Because I saw what happened at that party. And because, in some ways, I think we're both in the same boat right now. Ethan watched her for a moment, trying to understand. But then, something inside him calmed. For the first time that night, he felt like he wasn't alone. What are you going to do now? Molly let out a heavy sigh. Ask for a divorce, of course. But before that, I want to see Franklin pay for everything. He raised an eyebrow. And how exactly do you plan to do that? She smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was a smile from someone who had suffered enough and now just wanted to have their moment of justice. You already exposed your wife. Now it's my turn to expose my husband. And then, for the first time in hours, Ethan felt something close to satisfaction. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I knew that some people needed to feel the consequences of what they did. Molly picked up her phone and unlocked it, swiping the screen until an audio file opened. You'll be happy to hear that. And as Franklin's voice echoed through the speaker, indulging in careless words, Ethan realized that the night wasn't over yet. And maybe, just maybe, he was about to get better. The sun rose slowly, dyeing the sky with orange tones as Ethan walked down the sidewalk, feeling the early morning chill still clinging to his skin. The conversation with Molly had been a turning point. Knowing that Olivia was just another pawn in a dirty game, that everything she did was just the consequence of greater manipulation, didn't change the fact that she chose to betray, that she chose to destroy everything they had. But now, with every detail falling into place, he realized that what he felt was no longer anger. It was no longer pain. It was a deep tiredness, the kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying a weight for too long. He needed an end. The hours passed strangely, too quickly, too slowly. When he finally arrived home, he found the room in the same state he left it. Nothing seemed different, but at the same time, everything was. Olivia was sitting on the sofa, her legs crossed, her gaze fixed on the cup of tea between her fingers. She didn't look up when he entered, she just stood there, as if she knew there was nothing more she could do. He stopped in front of her, and for a moment, he just watched. She seemed smaller now, fragile, distant than she once was. But he was not fooled. I knew that guilt was late. That everything could have been avoided. Do you want to blame me for everything, Ethan? Her voice was low, lifeless, as if she had already lost any strength of argument. He crossed his arms, standing firm. I don't need to blame you, Olivia. You did this alone. She finally looked up, her red eyes revealing that she had spent the night crying. I was an idiot. I messed up. He nodded slowly, because it was the truth. Yes. She waited for him to say something more, anything that would give her a ray of hope, but it didn't come. Because there was nothing else. He left, he murmured. Disappeared after what you did at the party. He didn't even have the courage to face me. Ethan already knew this, and for a moment, he felt a slight tinge of satisfaction knowing that her lover was nothing more than a coward. But it wasn't enough. It never would be. Did you expect it to be different? He got what he wanted, Olivia. And now, you're alone. She closed her eyes, tears slowly running down her face. I wanted to go back in time. I wanted to undo all of this. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of that moment. A part of him, the one that still held on to old memories, wanted to believe there was a way back. But it was impossible. Some mistakes could not be erased. But you can't. She let her body fall against the back of the sofa, her gaze lost. I loved you, Ethan. Even with all that. He held back a bitter laugh, but didn't let it go. He just shook his head. If this is love, I'd rather never feel it again. Olivia didn't respond. She knew that, in that moment, she had lost everything. The next few days passed in a blur. The divorce was initiated without any major surprises. Ethan wanted nothing more than what was rightfully his. Olivia, without alternatives, accepted everything without question. Her name was mentioned in every corridor of the company, every look at her carried judgment, contempt, pity. The lover, in turn, did not emerge unscathed. Molly did exactly what she promised, she destroyed his reputation. Evidence was sent to the company's superiors, records of conversations, financial documents that linked his embezzlement to a much larger scheme. He was fired, exposed, rejected by everyone who once respected him. Molly broke free. After years in a suffocating marriage, he left with his head held high. For the first time, I felt like I had regained my identity, my voice. As for Ethan, he began to rebuild his life. It wasn't easy. There were lonely nights, times when the anger still tried to seep in, when the memories tried to pull him back. But he moved on. On a random day, months later, sitting in a cafe, he met someone new. There were no expectations. There was no rush. Just a light conversation, a sincere smile, a different look. And it was at that moment that he realized that, despite everything, there was still something waiting for him. Something that wasn't pain. Something that wasn't betrayal. And for the first time in a long time, he actually smiled. Now tell me, what did you think of this story? Comment your opinion here, I want to know your point of view. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, take the opportunity to subscribe and not miss the next impactful stories like this. Remember, betrayal is never the way. Every choice has its consequences. See you next time.